This episode is brought to you by the American Homebrewers Association. Want to get discounts on homebrew supplies and save money at craft breweries? Join the American Homebrewers Association and save at more than 2,300 AHA member deal locations worldwide and online. Members enjoy discounts on pints, food, and merch, and 10 to 30% off online orders. My local homebrew shop offers a 10% discount for AHA members, for example. Visit homebrewersassociation.org/basic brewing to check out the AHA member deals in your area and join the AHA. That's homebrewersassociation.org/basic brewing to join the American Homebrewers Association to access thousands of members-only discounts. homebrewersassociation.org/basic brewing. Welcome to Basic Brewing Radio for Thursday, January 12th, 2023. I'm James Spencer. Here at Basic Brewing Radio, we're all about home brewing. This week, Steve Wilkes and I continue to follow the career of our friend Jamie Conway, who's been on this show since he was a home brewer way back when. He's now head brewer at Social Project Brewing in Bentonville, Arkansas. We'll sample some beers with Jamie and with founder of Social Project, Chris Spence. If you go to basicbrewing.com, you can find archives of our audio and video shows, and if you go to basicbrewingshop.com, you can find our DVDs and our brewers' logbooks. If you want to support us financially, check out patreon.com/basicbrewing, and many thanks to everybody who's helping out in that way. If you go to patreon.com/basicbrewing, you can see a long list of stuff that you can access if you sign up as a supporter. Steve Wilkes and I are planning to shoot a couple of video episodes this week, and financial supporters will see those before the general public, along with recipes and behind-the-scenes videos of the brewing process. We'll feature 2 beverages flavored at bottling with the tinctures that we've been playing with. Tasty stuff. You may remember hearing homebrewer Ken Kazmersky sharing his hot dog beer with us at HomebrewCon this past year. Steve especially was a big fan of that beer. I thought it was delicious, too. You also may remember my saying that our longtime friend Greg McGill from Brewocracy down in New Zealand was really curious about that beer and wanted to try to meet up with Ken to try to taste it on a trip that he's making to the States this year. Well, it looks like the hot dog beer meetup is happening in Chicago in May, and I've already got my plane ticket to take part. Greg, Ken, and I are planning to meet and sample at Metropolitan Brewing and hopefully do a show there. And then the next day, go to the Ballpark Brew Fest in Schaumburg. How cool is that? Making connections over hot dog beer. Really looking forward to getting together with them. By the way, it's support from our financial supporters that helps things like that happen for this show. You know, hotel rooms and plane tickets aren't free. And also, so thank y'all for helping out doing that. Also support from our friends and sponsors like Desiree and Dave from HighGravityBrew.com. You know, Desiree and Dave have been loyal sponsors for many, many years, and I've heard from a lot of you who have in turn supported them with purchases of awesome Warthog electric brewing gear. HighGravityBrew.com can help you take the pain out of propane with turnkey electric Warthog systems or just the controllers and other bits and bobs if you're more handy than I am and want to upgrade gear that you already have. The Build Your Own Brewing System page on HighGravityBrew.com helps you customize a Warthog system to fit your needs. And if you use the code EBC75BB, you can save $75 off your Warthog electric purchase. And don't forget the Build Your Own Beer page, too, when you're shopping for ingredients. Go see our good friends at High Gravity and Pippin's Tap Room in Tulsa if you're in the area, and check them out wherever you are at family-owned and operated HighGravityBrew.com. That's HighGravityBrew.com. Okay, let's head on up to Social Project Brewing in Bentonville, Arkansas to talk to Jamie Conway and Chris Spence. Steve Wilkes, we are in a tap room.
It's really good to be back in a tap room, actually. I haven't been in one in a while, and this is a pretty nice one.
Yeah, we're drinking stuff, and we're not at one of our houses. So it's refreshing. Not that it's bad to be at our houses, but it's nice to be out and talking to other folks. And here we have a veteran of the podcast that we followed throughout his career since being a home brewer and a professional brewer, Jamie Conway. Welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me. It's good to be back and see you guys again.
Where are we at, and who have we got with us?
We're at Social Project Brewing in Bentonville, Arkansas, and we're with our founder and CEO, Chris Spence.
Chris, welcome, and I'm sorry that you lost the last R on your name, but I'm Spencer, and you welcome to the show.
Well, thank you so much. Yeah, it's funny. Every time I try to spell it out to somebody on the phone, I'm like, it's Spencer, like Spencer without the R. So, because otherwise they think I'm saying Smith. So,
and then they spell it with an S instead of CE. When the show Spencer for Hire was on, that was spelled with an SER, and that's when people started misspelling my name. Anyway, I'm off track. We're like 1 minute into it, and I'm already off topic. But Jamie, last time we talked to you, you were at Core Brewing Company, and we were tasting some tasty things over there, including some delicious seltzers that I think that you were instrumental in designing. This is a step down as far as the production numbers. And you are the brewing team pretty much, right? So why the change?
I had an opportunity to come to a place that was brewing all the styles that I love to make and drink, where I didn't quite have that luxury as much as I'd liked at my last place of employment, and it was just too good of an opportunity to come up and join a really well-established brewery that, like I said, was already making things that I would be making if I owned my own brewery. And
you're back. It's almost stepping into this system, and we'll talk about this system in a bit, compared to where you were, in a 20-barrel system, or at least the last time I heard it was 25-barrel system. This is a bit smaller, but is it almost like going back to your home brewing roots?
It's absolutely that, especially with all the crazy ingredients that we get to use, because Chris is always down to just buy the best stuff to make the most fun beer, and that's what we do here. I tell people that it's basically home brewing with way nicer toys.
And we got a tour of the system, and it looks great. It looks like a lot of fun to play with. But Chris, tell us about Social Project, and how long you all have been in operation, where you came from, why you've come into existence, and give us the elevator pitch of your brewery.
So Social Project really probably started as an ideal idea back in 2015, 2016. So my wife and I actually met at the University of Arkansas. And when I graduated from there, I went to work for J.B. Hunt, one of the big local companies. And I moved out with them in 2015 to Nashville. At the time, so we moved out there in the summer of 15. By the end of 15 and beginning of 2016, two breweries that I really consider two of my biggest influencers opened up, and that was Bearded Iris and Southern Grist. And watching those two breweries grow, explode, and really just bring in a lot of people into the brewing culture, and seeing some styles that I'd never really seen before, it didn't take long for me to go, that's what I want to do. But of course, you think, okay, that'd be cool, but how do I do it? And I think a lot of times it was like, well, that'll probably never happen. But after a couple of years, I was pretty determined that that's what I wanted to do. And so I just started getting really serious about what it would take financially, and started really looking into all of that. And then funny story is I sat down to write the business plan in March of 2020, about a week and a half before I got sent home from work to work from home for 2 weeks for this little thing called COVID. And it's as we all know, I never returned to work in the office form, and that totally changed the entire ideal of what we were going to do from a business plan perspective. I was going to crowler at first, never can right off the bat, but made the pivot to be able to do cans regardless. So fast forward, we ended up opening in September of 2021. So we've been open about 15 months, and we chose this area for a couple reasons. Like I said, my wife and I met here. We love this area. We see the explosive growth coming, and the brewing culture had really exploded since we left here, but nobody was really focusing on doing new beers every single week, on, crazy hazy IPAs and crazy fruited sours. They might do one here, they might do one here. We have a lot of really good traditional breweries locally, but that are a little bit more focused on distribution. So we get to have fun in playing with whatever the heck we want to play with and do new beers every week since we're not so focused on distribution.
Again, it kind of sounds like home brewing. But do you have a home brewing background?
No, I don't, and I get asked that literally all the time. So, I've homebrewed a couple of batches here and there. In Nashville, I lived in a 1,000-square-foot house with no garage because none of them have garages downtown. So trying to homebrew in a house like that and find a place to store it is near impossible. But, my passion, my whole background's in sales and marketing and strategic development. And so I kind of always knew the path point to be to set up the business and engineer it to run the way that I wanted to run, but to bring on awesome brewers to, run the program and do what they do best. And that way I could focus on the business side and do what we need to do so that we can still make fun beer. And I'm sure it's fun brewing beer, but it's way more fun drinking awesome beer. So.
And without a solid business and a plan to go forward, you don't get to brew the beer. So, do you get any bit of snobbishness from homebrewer types? When they find out that you're not a homebrewer?
I don't know that I get that specifically. I think sometimes it comes maybe as a little bit of a shock. It's like, oh, you don't have a homebrew background, because I feel like that might be a lot of the story. But I will say, like, from my research and talking to a lot of different breweries, it's pretty common that either A, you have multiple people, one of those not being the brewer, or B, what you end up having is a brewer that opens up a brewery so that they can be a brewer, and then the business grows, and lo and behold, they end up running the business. Mm-hmm. And a lot of them talk about how they, they don't regret it, but like they wish they could get back on the brew deck, right? So with me being able to focus on what I love, whoever the brewer is gets to stay in that lane and do what they love to do. So. And
that kind of goes along with your story, Jamie. You said that you, at your previous job, had worked yourself into a position where you weren't getting your hands dirty and or wet, and so you were more in the management side of things. So it's got to be kind of refreshing to get back and actually creating a product.
Yeah, I definitely forgot how physically demanding brewing is, especially when you're doing it by yourself. Because I'm the brewer, the cellarman, I guess the head of packaging. I wear a lot of hats, but at the same point, it's like Chris stated, he's more of the upfront guy, and he kind of he hired me to do a job, and I feel like I'm not being micromanaged. It's kind of my show, and we obviously work together on ingredients and orders and things that we're going to do in the future, but he kind of lets me fly, and that's what I really appreciate. And again, that's why I jumped at the chance for this opportunity, is because to be creative again and do all the things of why I fell in love with beer in the first place.
Excellent. Well, all this talking and listening has gotten me thirsty. So where should we start? We've got a bunch of beer here in front of us.
Well, we should probably maybe light us to make our way to the barrel-aged stout at the end. The first beer over here we have is our newest one. It's going to be our flagship American Light Lager. It's called Social Light, which is a fantastic name that Chris came up with. But it's just Pilsner corn, lager yeast, and very, very simple. It's around 4.5%, and we just wanted it to be a super approachable crusher beer.
Well, cheers, everybody.
Cheers.
Sound effects. So we'll take a sip, and Steve, have you got enough of a sip to talk about it so I can take a sip?
Oh yeah. Well, it's just you're right. It's just a nice crushable beer. It's I find myself liking these beers more and more and more.
Yeah, and as you can see on our draft menu, everything's we have a lot of variety up there. But at the end of the day, I think we've come to realize that you no matter how many beer geeks show up and wants that, you always get a pretty big portion of the crowd that says, give me your closest thing to Bud Light or whatever that's not a craft beer. And this is kind of our drink for them, and really for the masses, that you can have more than one of, and just very approachable craft beer, but show people a craft version of that style of beer.
Yeah, this is super clean, super good. It's got I think I can taste the corn a little bit. It's a teeny bit. I'm salivating. It's a teeny bit corny, which in this style is really good. It kind of reminds me of my cream ale recipe.
That's exactly what I was going to say, except for it reminds me of my cream ale recipe.
Of course, this is better brewed probably than my cream ale recipe. It's certainly more clear than mine. But so how does this sell compared to your other beers? What do people like to buy?
So actually we just released this last weekend on New Year's Eve weekend, and have already blown through a keg, and the cases are starting to fly. And then this is one of 2 beers that we're actually making available in cans to local liquor stores.
Oh, nice.
So where we make, a lot of new beer every single week, we've realized the need and the want for just a couple of flagships. That there are definitely consumers that want to have that same thing that they know is always on the menu, that they always love to always get. Lagers have always been one of our top sellers. We sell more hazies than anything else on like a ratio basis, but we have a lot more hazies on the menu than anything else. So on like a per tap handle category, the lagers outsell anything else. And we typically only have one up there because we always, like with any of our other styles, and yes, it's an American light lager, but quality and taste are always our first focus on any beer we do. So we let all of our lagers go quite a long time in the tank and make sure they're ready to go. We don't force them out, and we let them be ready when they're ready. That can be really hard to do, and that can stress out the amount of tank space you have. But again, where we won't compromise on ingredients, hops, anything like that, we're not going to do that on time either. But it was really ideal to have this out for January, the being dry January, everybody having New Year's resolutions, having a low-calorie, low-ABV beer. Yes, it's not alcohol-free, but it's a lot more considerate of whatever you may have pledged as compared to maybe a triple hazy IPA or a 12%, pastry barrel-aged stout. So.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about dry January, and does, other than on social media, is it a thing? I mean, do you actually see an impact on your spreadsheets, when January rolls around?
Yeah, so any brewer you talk to or any brewery you talk to, you'll find January and February are pretty bad months overall. I think you'll find that with any bar as well. And I think it's a conglomerate of things. So dry January is definitely a part of it. Super cold weather is a part of that. People spending too much money in December is a part of that. So, it all figures into that. I think last year, another big thing was that we had a big surge of COVID in January of 2021. So we had like 4 factors assaulting us, and like we felt like we had kind of finally made it by December, and we were in a good trajectory, and it was like, oh crap, like this January, February really sucks. I remember talking to one of our friends down the street, another brewery down the street, and they're like, just enjoy the slow time. And we're like, yeah, but we haven't been in business for as long as you have, and we don't just have cash stacked high, we don't have investors, and we're just bootstrapping this thing. So January, February, it's all about surviving. And then March and April, you finally get back to where you need to be, and then you can have fun in the summer.
Yeah, you can schedule your brewing where you can kind of catch up on the slow months, and then maybe have time to lager some of this stuff. So where should we go next? Not to hurry us on, but I'm done with this sample.
We can try. This is our. We released this last week as well. It's a cherry pie sour we did with a bunch of cherry puree, cinnamon sticks, and some vanilla.
Now, is this of your design?
Yes, this is. Thank you. And we're also. We were using, I don't know if I was going to ask you guys if you were using it, but we use a sour Vissier it's a yeast that basically sours the beer and ferments all in one shot in the fermenter, rather than, I was always doing traditional kettle sours, where I was adding lactobacillus and everything, but you're tying up tank space. I never used this until we came here, and I love, it drives the pH down to about probably between 3.3 and 3.5. Wow. And it ferments all the while. So from a production standpoint, when you're putting, fruit and all the other things into that, it's just a really, really great product that I've come to really like.
You're making a happy face.
Oh, the beer's great, and I was just impressed with the yeast, just want to get my hands on some of that stuff. Yeah.
So do you have enough of a taste? If not, I do. To me, it tastes like pie. It's nicely tart without, stripping the, enamel off your teeth or making you pucker. It's nicely tart in a cherry pie kind of way. But in the manner of, and this is a big compliment, of the New Glarus fruit beers, there's a crustiness to the background. It does taste like a pie in that you can taste the spice in there as well. But there is a crustiness in there that I'm assuming comes from the malt.
I think that's a fair assumption. What I was more caught with was the cherry that comes through. I mean, it's really bright and it has that kind of bright. I love cherry pie, and it tastes like a cherry pie. It's amazing.
So talk about your tips and tricks on how to do something like this.
I will say, since you touched on the pie crust aspect of it, one thing that I've noticed over batches of sour beer, because that's probably my favorite thing to brew, is sour beers and fruited like pastry sours, if you want to call them, is a little bit of honey malt. I find has kind of added that pie crust flavor, because we kind of play with a fairly traditional Berliner Weiss base, but just that little sprinkling of honey malt, I really like what it does to give it some of that pie flavor.
We talked to a couple of homebrewers at HomebrewCon this past year, and they actually used graham crackers or graham cracker essence or extract or something like that also gave a crustiness to it. But is this the kind of thing that you're looking for, Chris?
Oh yeah, I love this sour a lot. So we have basically two sour bases that we work from. We have, as Jamie was mentioning, kind of like our traditional base sour, which you'll see in a lot of our sours. But this whole base is all Jamie's, creation off of our base, and I love it because it adds kind of a new textural concept to the sour. And so what I like is we've done two of these pastries already. We did something called Sky Full of Stars. It was like a blueberry cobbler. Then did this cherry pie. And so you've got this balance of sweet, maybe savory spice, a little bit sour, but it's not too much of any of them. So it's very drinkable. And I will say, like, for a lot of years, I loved sours. And I've really worked my way to not really drinking very many sours anymore. But I think it's a very important style into getting new drinkers into beer. This is a sour that I can find myself actually drinking because it's not too much of any one thing. And it's nice to have a super, super sour or a super, super sweet sour. And so we try to balance that on the board with having kind of almost one of each if we can.
Yeah, you said pastry, but I wouldn't classify this as a pastry beer. In some of the ones that I've had are just kind of almost gloppy and just more of a milkshake kind of a thing. And this is less of a novelty. I mean, it is novel in that it does taste like a pie, but I could easily drink a pint or two of this without any problem at all. It's very approachable and super good. I mean, it's not like this is fun for this sample, but I don't want any more. I could drink a couple of these without any problem.
Awesome. Well, thank you for the compliment.
So talk a little bit about hopping this beer. How did you hop it, if you even did?
Oh, yeah, I did, but again, it's just a very, very minimal Tettnager charge. I try to keep them like between 5 to 7 IBU, so really just to kind of balance out that sweetness. But it's in a beer like this, you don't really want a hop presence, so I just kind of use a noble hop. And like I said, it's inspired by a traditional Berliner Weiss, so I do kind of try to hold to that original grain bill. I adjust the percentages a little bit, but ultimately, what it's going to become, the hops are really not a thing. But another cool thing with this yeast I was telling you guys about is you got to be very careful with hops when you're dealing with lactobacillus. So, because it's not tolerant to hops. So this has just been a really, really neat product to work with, and Chris introduced me to it, and #science. It's cool.
And where did the cherries come from? Because it tastes like real cherries.
It was a aseptic fruit puree.
Oh, okay.
So
it is real cherry.
yes.
Okay. Any issues with that in the brew house as far as how do you deal with the puree in the process?
It's just all been added on the cold side, and we don't really worry a whole lot about it when we're already playing with a sour beer. So, but I mean, we add it the same way we would dry hop, purging with CO2, and all the things to do everything we can to keep other microorganisms out of the beer. So.
Is this something that you would package? Is this something you would put in a can and
It's in the can.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's the can.
Oh, okay, right there.
Yeah.
So are you at all concerned about it getting a little warm and getting a little crazy in the summertime or something, or?
No, I mean, we've done a couple of slushies where we always tell everybody, like literally we instruct our bartenders, tell everybody, hey, these need to be kept cold. When you go home, put them in your refrigerator. Don't put them in the garage. Don't put them in your back of your trunk and leave it for 3 months. And we have there's something called potassium sorbate that can help stop fermentation. But even then, with our our last slushie that we did was almost 50% fruit. So yeah, I mean, you don't want to really take that risk. So that's our way of basically saying, hey, keep it cold, you're going to be fine. But I've had sours that I had my son's birthday in October, and I had a cooler full of stuff, and then I forgot there was beer still in there. I just literally took it out yesterday, and there were still sours in there, and they're still fine. They haven't exploded, so.
Yeah, and if you've stabilized it, it should be fine. I did some fruit purees in the keg. But I kept it cold, and the first couple of pints were pretty slushy. But yeah, as long as you take measures, to make sure that it doesn't continue activity, I think it should be fine. It's delicious. Where should we go next?
This is our.
I've had 2 samples of beer, and already I've forgotten where to put the microphone. Plus, I've been spoiled. I've got a new setup at home where we have separate mics. I don't have to worry about that.
Oh, nice. So this is Western Sun. It's a West Coast IPA. It's got Amarillo and Idaho 7. Nice. It seems that kind of West Coasts are starting to make a comeback. I think people might be, going back to some of those original styles. And it was just, I haven't brewed one in a while, and it was something that I wanted to give a shot. And it's always nice to have something a little bit more bitter on the board, to kind of balance out all the hazies and everything else that we have. So I wanted to go with more of a citrus approach on this one than kind of that piney, resiny, 120 IBU, West Coast that we probably all fell in love with 15, 20 years ago. But this is a little, I think, more deft approach at that, and makes it a little more approachable for the average drinker.
Yeah, it's certainly nice and clear. It's certainly a change of gears from the previous one. But Chris, what's your role in hop selection? Or since you're the business side, are you the guy that goes out and searches for the hops, or do you rely on your brewer, Jamie, to kind of request things, or how does that work?
Yeah, so it's definitely a team effort, and really just comes down to the beer. So the next beer that we'll taste is a triple hazy, and I picked all those hops. They're completely super fresh 2022 New Zealand hops that had been in the U.S. less than a week, have been in process less than 2 weeks ago. So I do care a great deal about the hops that we find and the hops that we use. But I'm totally open for anybody to create recipes or hop ideas. We also have a distribution manager, and he's instrumental. The barrel-aged stout we're going to taste, that's a combination of Jamie, myself, and our distribution manager, Nathan, all coming together and figuring out what we wanted to do. I will say the Western Sun is totally him, and a little bit was we had some hops that were really good hops. He's like, hey, we've got these 2 things. I think they'd be awesome in this West Coast. And I was like, I like the idea of using good hops that I've already paid for. So, it's a pretty good idea. Yeah. So, and it turned out, in my opinion, I love this beer. So
yeah, it's way good. This is another beer that's entirely crushable. It tastes pretty. What was the ABV?
I think it's 7-something.
7.6.
Yeah, it tastes bigger than the previous one. What do you think, Steve?
Well, it's just it reminds me of my childhood.
Out in the West?
Out in the West. I remember getting. I'm not saying that I remember that this tastes like Avery IPA, but Avery IPA was the first like giant. Holy crap! That's an IPA beer I ever had, and I was in love with it. I drank it until I couldn't drink it anymore. This reminds me of that. It's just big. It's in your face. It's not apologizing for what it is. So yeah.
Yeah, you said it's not. It's a little. It's big and bitter. It's a little on my palate, especially coming off of that previous beer. It's a little resinous. There's a little resin there going on.
Right, but it doesn't have that traditional kind of dank pine. And I was purposeful with that, and I also wanted to. I think I kept it around 60 to 70 IBUs, which is still a lot of IBUs. But I remember there was a time when I first started getting into craft beer when I would walk in and see something that was 130 IBUs and be like, give me that beer, and it's orange from all the Crystal 60 and and this one's a little more kind of golden yellow. You can see, it still has Crystal 60, but I was a little bit lighter handed on that one. So, definitely took inspiration from all those old school beers, but I guess wanted a little bit lighter, more new school approach to it.
Yeah, it's not the mouthfeel. It's not big and chewy as far as the mouthfeel is concerned, which is good.
Well, I was just going to say, and the hops, instead of that kind of Chinook Cascade resin, the Amarillo and Idaho 7 give it a little lighter approach, I think.
And one thing I was going to say is same thing. I think maybe most everybody that's been in craft beer for a while had their big West Coast phase. And I worked into it, and then I worked out of it, and now I drink them here and there. I'm really getting more back into them. But I'd say my biggest knock on like old school, big, bitter, resinous West Coast just really dries your mouth out, and you can only take so much of it. This beer finishes so clean, so crisp, and even though there's that like bitter, piney resinous to it, it's gone by the time you finish the sip. So you automatically want more of that beer. And I do think like the Idaho 7 is a cryo hop, which I think comes a lot into that. So you're stripping out about 50% of the vegetal matter. So you're getting about half of the bitterness from that. And it was added on the dry hop. So it's got that balancing act of what you're getting in the boil versus what you're getting on the dry hop.
Yeah, talk about your hopping strategy for this beer.
Kept the original kind of hopping charge or the bittering charge on the hot side, but yeah, like you said, to get some of that nose and some of that flavor without overly bittering it, we just added the cryo, and I believe it was all Amarillo on the hot side, and then we added the Idaho 7, the regular variety, and cryo on the back end.
It's way good. Yeah. It's a kind of beer that gets better as you drink it. I don't know if it's just a buildup of the hop compounds, and as you drink it, but it's like, and then you want another sip and another sip. And like you said, Chris, it's not like some of those early 130 IBU beers or whatever. It's not like a dare to drink it and you get through it and it's like, now I can drink something else. This is like, this is good.
I was remembering the Avery Hog Heaven barley wine, and I got so into the hops, I was drinking that like it was a Miller Lite, it's just like, give me more of that. That lasted about a year, maybe, but
or the Maharaja.
Or the Maharaja. Yeah. I don't know why I'm picking on Avery today.
You're flashing back.
Yeah, but this beer kind of reminds me of that somehow.
Yeah. And it's another compliment. Very soon, I'll be getting together with Chris Colby and Matt Giovanisi on our recipe development series to formulate lager recipes. Why? Because I've got some packages of L25 Huga from our friends and sponsors at Imperial Organic Yeast. Huga is the seasonal yeast from Imperial. It's a northern European lager yeast famously used in Pilsner-style beers that complement significant hop additions. Clean and crisp with a very light sulfur profile. Matt wants to do an Italian Pilsner, and I think Chris is wanting to go a little darker with a Vienna lager. Both would be delicious. Usually I make a starter for lagers, or at least in the past I did, but with 200 billion cells in each Imperial package, I say my Sterpolate is dusty because I don't even use it anymore to make starters for moderate gravity 5-gallon batches, even lagers, in my experience. For ales, my airlock is usually bubbling before bedtime, and lagers, usually bubbling before breakfast. Ask your local homebrew store about L25 Huga from Imperial Organic Yeast, and check them out at imperialyeast.com. That's imperialyeast.com. So where do we go next? This one's, you can't see through this one.
Yeah, this one's our triple hazy IPA. It's called Lounging in Paradise, and like Chris said, it's got the New Zealand hops, Pacific Sunrise, Rawaka, and then it's got some Citra Cryo. So this was definitely a big dry hop. We definitely go for a lot. The bigger the beer, the more hops. So I think you'll notice the nose on this one is pretty substantial, and bitterness is dialed back because most of it's all done on the dry hop side. But it's just big, flavorful, fresh tasting, really good beer.
Ooh. And that's, I see 10% ABV on the on the can. Wow. Okay, I took a sip and I'm thinking about what I'm tasting. Talk about your response to it. And this is another one of your beers, Jamie?
Again, it's something that Chris and I work together, but he chose all the hops on this one. He keeps trying to give me credit, but I'm like, you designed, you did the flavors. I just made it. So
what's your reaction to this beer?
I love this beer. I think it's probably my favorite hazy that we make or that we've ever made. Honestly, just the balance of everything from the hop perspective. And I probably drink more of Rivers and Roads since it's 7%, and I can drink it all the time. And if I drink 3 or 4 of these, I'm in trouble. But but this is like I go home at night and I want to drink one beer because I'm kind of beered out and I just want to drink one beer. I'm going to pop a can of this.
Yeah, it's delicious.
It's absolutely delicious. I get pineapple and mango and banana, and I'm happy to see you.
Now, is there any, this has a substantial mouthfeel, and I say this every time, I don't get the alcohol. It's pretty sneaky in that way, but it is juicy. Is there lactose in there?
There's not lactose, but there's a lot of oats.
Okay.
And that's pretty, you're going to find that as a pretty big component in just about any hazy, all that protein. But yeah, that's got a pretty decent percentage of oats in that one. And, we don't get too crazy with the grain bill. If you look at a lot of other breweries, it's pretty similar, or that are specializing in hazies, it's pretty similar. But yeah, the oats, as far as mouthfeel and creaminess and all that play probably the biggest role.
What's the percentage?
I'd have to look at my notes, but if I had to guess off the top of my head, it's probably 12 to 15%.
Okay. Right. Yeah, it's way good. There's enough bitterness to make it, another one of my words, balanced and interesting, and it's not just like sipping on like a mango juice or something like that. There's a little bit of a kick in there to keep it interesting and quaffable.
My first sip of it, the fruit came out immediately, but also, I guess it's the 10%. It was warming. It was soothing. It's like, and maybe that's from shooting that little IPA just now. And I sipped some of this. I just, now I'm happy.
Steve's having a nap in the car on the way back.
We've got couches here.
Yeah, we may take you up on that.
It was more like sipping on a cocktail, to be honest. It hit me a little bit like a brandy something with a bunch of fruit in it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's good. I'm only halfway done, but maybe that's good.
Well, we're just going up in ABV from here, so.
Yeah, I'll say we learn a lot about hops every time we do a hazy. So one thing that if you've been following us or if you haven't, if you come into the tap room, you'll notice we use a lot of what they call new age hop products or high depth, high charge hop products. Every brand has their different name that's, proprietary, but you'll hear Cryo, you'll hear Incognito, you'll hear a lot of different things. And we really love those. But you definitely still need a lot of the traditional T90 pellets, or you don't get enough bitterness. So like we did a triple hazy at one point that was pretty much it was 5 different types of Citra hops. It had Incognito, it had Cryo, it had Spectrum. So it had all these crazy new age that had pretty much removed all the vegetal matter and only one bag of T90. And that beer is good, but it lacks a bitter depth to it. And so like using these in the right combinations makes a beer that's really balanced even more so juicy, and the staying power of that over a long period of time as well. You'll notice like Cryo and Incognito really develop in like the month plus, because if you use all T90, you start to get a little bit of a fall off because it's so volatile. But a lot of those volatile aromas are protected, and however they do this scientifically, and nobody will reveal it, they'll only tell you a few details. But what's cool is when you use beers with like Cryo or Incognito, those really start coming out in 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks. And it just carries the beer. So like we could have a can of Rivers and Roads set in the fridge for 4 months. That thing's just going to taste like almost like it's super fresh. And that's because of the Incognito in it. So we use a lot of the Incognito and Cryo hops.
He sounds like a brewer.
That's what I was about to say. Don't let him fool you. He knows he likes to play the front of the house guy, but he's pretty instrumental in a lot of the recipe design and stuff that goes on.
He may not know how to run hoses as much as you do, but I bet you could pitch in a pinch.
I've pitched in a pinch here and there. I at least know how to dump a grain bag or two, so there's that.
Does he make you clean out the mash tun, or?
No, I don't think he ever has, actually. Typically, I offer, and he's like, I'm faster at this.
Get out of my way.
Get out of the way, white collar.
But he does make me dump the grain buckets with him, so that's always fun. So, because we have to, basically we have a farmer that comes and pick up the grain buckets, and we have this big, huge tote outside. So we have to take all these like 27-gallon Home Depot totes and drag them out there and then lift them. It's a 2-man job. You lift it and then you dump it. You hope you have the IBC totes that have the metal supports. Otherwise, you're trying to hold this weight while dumping it. It's really fun when it's 10 degrees outside, too.
Yeah, there are certain times I definitely miss having a forklift at my disposal.
Oh, yeah. Hint, hint.
But speaking of grain, I'm just curious how you guys, what your grain philosophy is. In other words, you get all this palette of beers. How do you design your grain bills so that it's not just fun but also profitable?
Yeah, there's got to be some economics in there as well.
I'll let Chris take the reins on that one.
Yeah, so like I said, when I was writing this business plan, quality was always number one. And so the aspect of cutting a product's quality by cutting its price was never going to be an option. And it's something I've never caved once on. It's something I'll never cave on. And so our business strategy is maybe a little bit different than others. If we can find ways to save money, if we can find an equivalent product that reduces cost, great, like bring it on. And I'm always looking for that. But if we can't, then the price is just going to have to be higher to the consumer. So, and there's some scary tactics in that we're the first doing this kind of stuff. So, that Lounging in Paradise is $25 a 4-pack, including tax. Wow. We were $22 when we opened, but I'm sure everybody's aware of inflation. And one of the things for us that's been the hardest is our base grain cost has gone up close to 40% since we opened 15 months ago. And so we're already the highest priced brewery in town, and the rest of the brewing world hasn't increased prices yet. And so we can't really afford to go crazy on our prices. So in a way, we're kind of taking that hit, but we have raised everything a couple dollars, not necessarily on the draft, but on the cans, because aluminum's gone up and everything else. And haven't really seen any rebuttal to it. I think people really understand hey, everything's gone up. It's probably gone up for you guys too. But yeah, that's always been the thing is great. If we can save money, great, do it, but it can't affect the quality of the product. So if I need to price my product at $25 a 4-pack instead of $22 a 4-pack, I will. And this hop combination was a very expensive hop combination, so it pushed it up $2 or $3. But I think people love the beer and they realize that it's worth that extra money.
So to follow up with that, so I was actually on the operational side of that. So when you place a grain order, are you primarily buying Maris Otter or Common American Two-Row or Simpson's Gold?
Yeah.
So do you have a basic palette, I guess?
I would say, Pilsners are pretty much base grain almost across the board for a lot of the beer styles. Obviously, if we're doing some other stuff, we're going to do what we need to do. But Pilsner's plays a big role with what we do. That, and I would say oats are our two biggest grains that we use, because oats get used in a lot of the stuff that we make.
Yeah, I was just going to say, so we use every single hazy that we've ever done has always been only European Pilsner as our base. We haven't, used two-row. I'd say that. We have one that we didn't do that way. It was a collab with the National Pediatric Cancer Foundation, and all the ingredients were donated. It was like a nationwide collab. Each state did one, and then all the proceeds go back to fight pediatric cancer. So that one we used two-row on because that's what was donated and that's what was called for. But other than that, for anything that we do, it's always 100% Pilsner base.
Yeah, that kind of leads me into something I forgot to ask at the beginning, but your name, Social Project, what does that mean? Where does that come from?
Yeah, so basically it's I'll say 5-6 months of trying to figure out a name, which who knew in the whole grand scheme of opening a business, trying to find a name would be the hardest thing. But I guess once you approach and eclipse the 9,000 brewery mark in the United States, you have to get really creative with your name. And I will say, there are quite a few breweries with Project in their name now, but I do think when you put Project in your name, it gives a sense of it being a smaller, more boutique experience. And the social is really it's a threefold thing. We basically have 3 main pillars that we try to follow across the course of the business, and that's what our name's based off. So first of all, family and friends. So encouraging and driving experiences with family and friends. We feel like that's very important to anybody's success in life. And so we want our tap rooms to be a place of a very welcoming environment, a place where people can sit down and have a beer next to, their political enemy and find out they have a new best friend, because surprise, surprise, you drink a beer and all of a sudden the online craziness goes away and you find out you can be friends regardless of where you two may differ. And Northwest Arkansas, I don't think people know this outside the area unless they've traveled a lot for tourism. It's always kind of annoyed me, but the whole presumption is they're just a bunch of backwoods hillbillies or whatnot. It's no, Northwest Arkansas is extremely diverse. So obviously everybody kind of knows Walmart's here. You've got several other Fortune 100 and 500 companies here. You got an exploding tech sector. You got the University of Arkansas, which is a very well-ranked school, and somewhat affordable. I came from Texas, and my in-state tuition was far cheaper than my in-state tuition would have been at UT or A&M. But you've got people everywhere from India to California to Texas to, there are multiple different countries all over the United States. They're all here. And so I think that, again, just providing an environment where we can all be one community was a big part of that. And that's always been a drive with our business. And then kind of the third aspect of that would be giving back. So giving back to the local community is a big focus for us. We're young, we're small, you can only do so much up front, but we try to do things like host events, donate our space for different fundraisers and things like that, doing the collab with the National Pediatric Cancer Foundation, anything like that we can do, any kind of help. We're getting ready to roll out something called Dollar Club on Tuesdays. And basically, we'll take $1 of every pint or 4-pack or merch item sold on Tuesdays, and that'll go to meet a need in the community. And that doesn't have to be through a nonprofit or anything. So it could be a single mom that her AC's gone down and it just needs a $1,500 check written to the repair company. Just stuff that maybe wouldn't be fulfilled by a nonprofit, that it wouldn't fit into what they could do, but we can go do that, and I don't need the tax write-off. We just want to do it because that's what we care about. So that's kind of why we got named Social Project.
Wow. sign me up. That sounds like a pretty good place to work.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun, and it's good to be part of a team that wants to give back and, makes you feel good, and that what you're doing is more than just beer.
Speaking of beer, we have one last standing.
It's the coup de grace.
It looks like it says Savoy Truffle on the.
One beer to rule them all. That's
Who wants to pour? You want me, Chris? You're the owner. You do the. Oh boy, that's motor oil looking. That's a big, luscious, dark beer. What do we got here, Jamie?
So this is Savoy Truffle. It's a barrel-aged stout. They already had the barrels filled when I came aboard. I believe it's 12%. It was done in Willet barrels, and this is just off of a single barrel. And I personally toasted the coconut and the Marcona almonds that are in there, and we added some Kaya chocolate cacao nibs to this thing. So it's a liquid almond joy, and it's a pretty good beer. So,
well, speaking of toasted, let's cheers,
guys.
I missed you, Steve. There we go. Okay.
well, I missed you too. But we've had lunch and now a few beers.
There's a table between us. I missed you, man. A moment of silence. Oh, the coconut just reaches out. I brought it. Oh, I forgot to put my mic in front of my face. I just was putting the glass up to my nose, and that coconut just reached out. Oh man, there's a lot to smell. I could smell this for a couple minutes.
Yeah, and the Marcona almonds were really fun to play with because that's just not a typical ingredient I think you see in a lot of beer for one. And I don't know if you've had a Marcona almond, but when we got the bags of it, we spent half the time munching on those before we even got them in the beer. But like what it gave to this beer, it was just outstanding, and I really love this beer.
I could really smell the almond in it. I feel like I'm on Saturday Night Live's NPR. I love your sweaty balls.
Or what was the Betty White one? Sure. Okay, we're straight.
Yeah.
All right. No, man, I've taken a sip, and it is a liquid. But again, it's not. It doesn't burn, but it's like a.
I thought you were talking about an STD.
No, it's STP. It's an oil treatment. No.
Doesn't burn.
Tastes familiar. No, it's all right. We're getting silly, Chris.
Yeah.
Talk some reason into it.
Yeah, so like Jamie said, it was aged in Willet barrels, so I'm a huge bourbon guy, and it only falls short to beer as far as like ranking them. So finding really high-quality barrels has always been a focus of mine. Having a barrel-aged program has always been a focus of mine, so we had barrels filled within the first 6 weeks of us being open. And I would love to have 100 barrels, but I just don't. But we'll be there someday. So this, when we were, basically Jamie and I tasted through all the different barrels, Willet barrels add a really nice chocolatey depth to their to the stouts. And so when we tasted this one, it had a really nice chocolate depth, had a really nice, kind of that traditional vanilla caramel boozy bourbon to it, but it was never hot. And so we were like, hey, came up with this idea, and it's like we've already kind of got the chocolate presence. We just our approach to stouts is like, I'd say it's an in-between. So I feel like there's kind of one of two ways to go. You can either go full-blown pastry, which is you take a barrel-aged stout and then you load it with so much adjuncts you basically never taste the base barrel anymore, or you can just focus on the barrel and make a pretty boozy, chocolatey, roasty bourbon barrel-aged stout. We're trying to find that fine line between the two with really any release we do. And so this is trying to be not a pastry and not a non-adjuncted. It's trying to allow you to taste the barrel, but also still have kind of that pastry experience without it being overly sweet. And then we love using local vendors anytime we can. So Kaya is a bean-to-bar producer out of, I forget what their address technically is. It's either Cave Springs or Springdale. They're They're right past Cave Springs. When you go towards the airport, you go past Cave Springs. They're right there. They're awesome. They're great people. We use their vanilla and stuff. We use their white chocolate and stuff. They do a lot of great stuff. And so I think like having their cacao and then having like Marcona almonds, which I had never even heard of.
Me neither.
But they have about 3 times the flavor of any other almond. They're just so deep in flavor. And so getting that. And then my 2 favorite adjuncts in stouts are coffee and coconut. So, I'm never going to say no to coconut and beer. I think I want to do a coffee version of this beer someday. So,
yeah, this is luxurious. The mouthfeel is silky. The chocolate is there. I can taste the coconut, and it's rare, but I can taste the nuts. I threw that one to you on purpose.
sorry.
Right if you get work and hang by your thumbs. I don't even know how to transition. This is a really fine beer. I was comparing it in my mind to 1050. It's not as heavy as 1050, I don't think. I get the coconut, I get the almonds. Everything is there. Nothing's out of balance. I'm left with more chocolate than anything else in my mouth. That's why it tastes as chocolate. Super luxurious. I'm not sure how much of this I could drink. I don't think very much. And I mean that as a compliment, actually. This is kind of to me, this is a snifter beer at the end of the day. Perhaps 4, 6, 8 ounces, pretty much max for me. Others, maybe not, but for me, this is that kind of beer. And if I still smoke cigars, I'd have one with it.
Yeah, this is wonderful. And you're right. This sample that we were poured is just right.
I'll say, so we chose 500 milliliter bottles, which is like 16.9 ounces, as our platform. And that had a lot to do with all the different sizes I've consumed. And I feel like in the right scenario, in the right day, it can be drank by yourself. We all have one of those days. Yeah. But generally, it's a really good size to share. Yeah. And honestly, like a 750, which is like 26 ounces almost, can almost be too much for even 2 people to share.
That's right.
But this is still enough for 3 or 4 people to share. Mm-hmm. So it fits that need of being 2 to 4 people, but also on that right day, you can drink it by yourself. And that's kind of why we went with the 500 milliliter platform.
Yeah, in my experience, a giant bottle of something even as delicious as this in my house just doesn't get opened because there's hardly an opportunity for it. It's like, I'm not going to open this by myself, but you really need kind of a party, a dinner party to do something like that and give it the respect that it needs. So you didn't brew this beer, but do you know about the base beer?
I don't believe I've actually seen the recipe. I just kind of, when it comes to this beer, I kind of tell everybody I came in as a relief pitcher, and I basically I brought it home with the adjunct.
Well, you got the save for
Would
sure.
you say? Yeah, I was going to say.
Yeah.
Beat me to the punchline.
This is my Mariano Rivera beer.
So, would you come in at the bottom of the 9th?
Yeah, there's definitely 2 on, and the bags were juiced, and they brought me into a full count, and I was able to strike the batter out. So.
Oh man,
I was going to say you hit it out of the park, but that's the wrong side of the.
That's the wrong side there, James.
I'm not a sports guy.
No, it turned out to be a really, really good, enjoyable beer. It was actually a lot of fun because, like I said, on a Sunday afternoon, I was toasting pounds and pounds of coconut at home, and all the Marcona almonds and all that went into it. So it was a fun beer to do, even though I didn't actually brew it.
Bet your house smelled good. Well, wow, we've talked for a long time. I just looked at the time. Time flies when you're talking with fun folks who know about beer and will give you beer. So this is, you've been on my radar for a while. I was kind of waiting, for you to get your feet on the ground and hit your stride, so to speak, Chris, before I came up and asked to come and visit. But then Jamie called or emailed and said he was up here. And I was like, this is perfect. This is an excellent confluence, and Jamie, thanks for getting in touch.
Yeah, thanks for coming up, and good to always see you guys and have a chat and drink some beers. It's always a pleasure.
And Steve, thanks again for coming.
Well, thanks. It's been a great day, James.
And Chris, thanks to you, and we appreciate your hospitality, and best of luck.
Yeah, thank you very much. And I'll just say one more thing. Like, mentioned Jamie reaching out to y'all. He's a phenomenal brewer and become a really good friend of mine. And just, yeah, you can say I know a lot about beer, but when it comes down to the technical side, like, Jamie knows every little detail, and he's militant in his own mind about tracking every little detail. And I don't think I realized how important that was, honestly, until he came on board. So, like, very lucky to have him, and very excited to just see what we're going to do together, and continuing to work with all the other local breweries to continue to develop the local craft beer market.
Awesome. Excellent. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks again to Jamie and Chris, and of course to Steve for spending the day with me. That was a very good day. I'll post some pics on Facebook and Instagram, and you'll see the cool 7-barrel system that Jamie gets to work with every day. If you have brewing questions, show suggestions, or just want to say howdy, write to james@basicbrewing.com, or just fill out the contact form on basicbrewing.com, and please don't forget to tell us where you're from. Check out our mobile-friendly shop at basicbrewingshop.com. Thanks to everybody supporting us through our Patreon page. Special goodies coming your way. Check that out at patreon.com/basicbrewing. That's all until next time. Until then, thanks for listening, everybody. I'm James Spencer. Production help for Basic Brewing Radio and our website is provided by Kelly Dodson. Basic Brewing Radio is a production of Active Voicing. We'll talk to you next time, everybody. In the meantime, stay well and stay tuned. So long.